Good morning. How we doing? Welcome back, Brandon. Where'd you go on vacation? I got my coffee. We got some exploits to talk about. I was just collecting some headlines this morning. Obviously, I think there was also some updates in the GitHub hack since I was live yesterday. Oh man, as I go live, getting texted drama. What up, Colin? Have missed you this week. Hope all is well. Tybee Island. I don't know what Tybee Island is. Where's Tybee Island? Oh, don't be sorry. Don't be sorry. You had stuff for school. I don't think I clocked that you were in school. What? Oh my gosh. What's up, small biz? You were on my YouTube algorithm this morning because we pulled up your stream yesterday. So you were on my homepage. That was pretty funny. Someone hacked your GitHub. I hope they fixed my website repo. Really? Did your GitHub really get hacked? No, I haven't listened yet. I just clocked that you were on my homepage. I was like, oh yeah. I haven't listened to anything yet. All right. What do we want to talk about first? This Linux exploit or this Chrome exploit came out yesterday. How about Chrome? Should we start with Chrome? No, you were saying if. Oh, if so. Sorry. Hold on. More coffee. If someone hacked your GitHub. Well, I'm not talking about specific people's GitHubs being hacked. GitHub themselves was hacked. And we talked about it a little bit yesterday, but there are some updates. So we can talk about some updates. But yes, I collected some of these headlines, but haven't actually dug into the news yet. So we're going to read it all together. Apparently, Google put out exploit code before a patch, and this was reported 42 months earlier. So this is kind of unusual for Google. I mean, it says long delays are common. All right, let's go through it. Let's figure out what's going on. So on Wednesday, they published exploit code for an unfixed vulnerability in Chromium, which is Chrome, Edge, Brave, that kind of stuff. The proof of concept code exploits the browser fetch programming interface. An attacker can use the exploit to create a connection for monitoring some aspect of a user's browser and as a proxy for viewing sites and launching denial of service attacks. Depending on the browser, the connections either reopen or remain open even after the device has been rebooted. Okay. Google doesn't usually publish proof of concept code. So what's the story here? The unfixed vulnerability can be exploited by any website a user visits, so that's bad for a browser bug. In effect, a compromise amounts to a limited backdoor that makes the device part of a limited botnet. Okay, so it's not like remote code execution, but they can turn browsers into like remote residential proxies or something like that, which is valuable. Tons of threat actors do this. Limited to the same things the browser can do, visit sites, provide anonymous proxy browsing to others, DOS attacks. Yeah. Okay. So they get control of the browser, but not control of the machine. Got it. Why was the POC published? I don't really know. The independent researcher who discovered the vulnerability privately reported it in late 2022. She said using the exploit code Google prematurely published would be pretty easy, although scaling it to wrangle a large number of devices in a single network would require more work. Yeah, obviously. Since reporting it 46 months ago, crazy number, the vulnerability remained unknown except to Chromium developers. Then on Wednesday morning, it was published to the Chromium bug tracker. Initially assumed the vulnerability was finally fixed. Shortly thereafter, she learned, in fact, it remained unpatched. While Google removed the post, it remains available on archive sites along with the exploit code. That's not like hyper normal, right? Like out of nowhere via the bug tracker to put POC code up, especially for an unfixed bug. Priority is P1, severity S2. She's reported multiple other Chromium vulnerabilities that have resulted in patches. She said long delays in fixing them are common, although this incident was the longest. I think what happened is sort of non-standard in that it does not get past any defined security boundary. So this does not let an attacker, for example, access your emails or your computer or something like that. Yeah, so they deprioritized it. But like, what? Yeah, Firefox and Safari are not Chromium. Private bug disclosure thread. A developer said that logs indicate that use of the background fetch feature is extremely limited, with an average of 17 completed files per user per day. Solid confirmation that nothing awful is happening in sales. So it's not being weaponized in the wild yet. And like we said, it's not the most severe bug, but these residential proxies are like pretty big business, right? A vul, no sandbox escape. Yeah, which is why it's deprioritized, right? But let's go, like, if they can be used as web proxies, let's look at, where's Krebs talks about these a fair bit. How do I see like Krebs's archive? Patch Tuesday, Russian hacked routers, ransomware gang, canister worm, IoT botnet, Kim Wolf. Krebs was hot on this Kim Wolf thing. Yeah, here. See, he's put out a ton of content about Kim Wolf. And this botnet, I was trying to just find like information about the botnet. What the fudge just happened? Are you all still here? Yeah. What just happened? Something just restarted on my computer. I just got hacked. No. All right, here. This anonymity network, it's a hard word to say when you're only a quarter of the way through your first coffee. But yeah, this network, this like Kim Wolf botnet, oh, this is when they crashed into I2P, which is slightly different. But basically, this is like as a service, you can hire this botnet, which has a ton of hacked devices on residential IP addresses, which there's a whole business for, right? So even though this Google vuln isn't like RCE and sandbox escape, it would still be pretty valuable amongst cyber criminals. Defense X helps with what? What does Defense X help with, Brendan? Google Chrome programs are great, though. I've been working with them a bunch on ACE, RC, SB, and something upstream for mobile. Solid experience. Once you got past the AI triage. What's up, Pilfers? I don't think I recognize your name. Welcome to stream. Are you a bug bounty hunter by trade? I'm kind of annoyed. I used to say that I was in the Google Bug Hall of Fame. But I don't know if there's like an age limit on that because I did it in 2011 and I can't find my name on there anymore. Yeah, my name isn't on there anymore. But neither is my like co-researcher. Yeah, I don't know. Either we did it before they started maintaining the current Hall of Fame or there's a time limit. Software engineer, reverse engineer, jack of all trades, goblin. Forrest Gump of tech. So does that mean you have ping pong playing robots? That's cool. Well, welcome in. I don't know if you've been here before and I just don't remember your name. Sorry. Welcome, welcome, welcome. If you have no idea who the hell I am, longtime cyber pro, now cyber yapper. I legacied out. Certified UNC status. I have been paid money by the Google Bug Bounty program, but my name is no longer in their list of people who have done that. You know who I am. Ton of mutuals. Cool. Well, welcome. All right. So that's the Chrome one. Not that serious, but just kind of a weird turn of events, right? Super old bug, even though it's not sandbox escape. Strange that it's that old, and then strange that like in the bug tracker, like POC code wound up. All right. I saw this one basically hit every news site this morning at exactly 10 a.m. So you could tell that there was an embargo on this information. So China target telco with new Linux malware. So this one and the Google one are the reason for my stream title today, right? So the China targeting telcos has been kind of like a theme of the year. Yeah, I've got that one up too. I've got that story up too. Boop. This one. Yeah, we'll hit that in a sec. Let's go through this Linux thing really quick. I've got a Cisco vuln to talk about too. All right, Lumen's Black Lotus Labs and PwC Threat Intelligence. It's always so funny when you don't realize some companies have legit security researchers on payroll. Like, who the hell knew that PwC had a security intelligence team that they were going to start publishing research, right? So China hacking telcos is not new, and I think Lumen was even part of a lot of the earlier telco stories. Newly discovered Linux and Windows malware. So I guess not an exploit. How does the malware get on though? According to researchers, the threat actors used multiple telecom themed domains to impersonate their targets. The ace I reported to Fang is being bugger flicked as not a security issue. Oh, man. This is why I don't do bug bounty stuff anymore. You get too many of these like weird responses. Dupe or like, random shit like that, like you were talking about. It's so annoying. What is this? This just popped up in my Intel feed too. NTFS trick that can make malware disappear from EDR scans. That's cool. All right, sorry, ADD. So the telecom theme domains to impersonate their targets. Implant Calypso in these attacks, dubbed Showboat K-Worker. It's a modular post-exploitation framework built for long-term persistence after initial compromise. It's very China MO. The initial infection vector is unknown. That's the whole reason I was reading this. Damn. They're just trying to get out of paying you $80K. That's what I always felt like too. The nice thing is I get to watch them fix the bugs since the repo is public. Yeah, you should flame them if you gave them a bug that they fixed and they didn't pay for some BS reason. You should absolutely drag them publicly. Malware can upload or download files. Yeah, the malware can do malware things. One notable feature is the hide command, which enables a process to conceal itself on a host machine by retrieving code stored on external websites such as pastebin or online forums used as a dead drop. I mean, this is just malware doing malware things, right? I really didn't want to read about the malware. I wanted to read about how they got onto what telecoms and how did they get on. Do we not know? What telcos got popped by this malware and how did they get on? Super annoying. Hey, and bleeping, you don't link the research. If Lumen, I want to read the research paper. Where is it? It's not linked in this whole article. That's effed up. That's effed up. All right, Lumen's Black Lotus Labs. Now I got to Google Lumen's Black Lotus Labs and see if I can find this research paper. What? No, give me the blog. They don't have a blog out. Okay. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I Googled Lumen telco stuff and it's them from 2023. Gosh. No, I can't find. You would think that there would be like something that bleeping was writing about for that, right? I would like to read this malware write-up. Those pictures came from somewhere. Good morning. Yeah, it was the wiretap service that got hacked. Yeah, but wasn't Lumen the one that uncovered that too? All right, everyone wrote about the first VPN. All right, I can't find anything else about this malware. We'll come back to it. It's like that news just came out like moments ago. Oh, here's the hacker news. What's up, Pfefferman? I'm trying to find, do they have a link? I don't want to read the news articles about this if they're not going to say anything. I would like to read the actual write-up. Gosh darn it. None of these are from these research. So did these researchers not actually publish anything? They just went straight to the news and just gave the news these pictures and shit? That's annoying because these news articles don't have a lot of information. What's this tweet? Defender 0-day patch has been fun. Can AI agents turn security vulnerabilities into real attacks? Well, that's like the whole point of Mythos, right? Mythos. It can make exploits happen that other AI agents can't. Exploit Jim, how fun. We find autonomous exploitation is no longer hypothetical, even with the Linux kernel. I see Carlini in this list here. Update my Google foo, my guy. Yeah, Mythos. The whole point of Mythos is that it can do exploits that other stuff can't. What the hell? How'd you find it? I literally went to Lumen's blog and it wasn't there. I didn't even just do Google foo. Whoops. That's so annoying. Whatever you just gave me didn't load either. That Lumen link that you just gave me didn't load either. There's JS errors in the blog. See, like I went to this blog and it's like, is your network ready? Announce entry to support, like, it's like press releases. Like there's nothing from the malware here. Like this is their blog. Nada, nada. And then yeah, this is the link you just gave me. And it just does this. Nada, 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 nada. Anyway, whatever. Where'd that tweet go? All right, so Carlini's on this, so I immediately take it more seriously. Let's read this thread. Exploit Gym is a large-scale and realistic benchmark for exploitation. 898 real-world vulnerabilities across Google V8 JavaScript, Linux kernel. Each task is to start from a known vulnerability and asks the agent to produce a working exploit. Okay. Without standard mitigations enabled, so this stuff like ASLR and the sandbox, Mythos exploited 157 of the 898 vulns, and GPT 55120 within the time limit. These working exploits can achieve arbitrary code execution or privilege escalation, not just bug reports. Okay. The result also revealed emerging risks, even with standard mitigations such as ASLR, canaries, heap sandbox. Agents still produced working exploits. Agents also sometimes went off script and discovered entirely new vulnerabilities that they weren't given. Interesting. Yeah, this is like the whole point of what Mythos. I did not know that GPT-5.5 was this close to Mythos in these capabilities. So why aren't we gating access to 5.5? Why isn't the White House calling special meetings and making sure that 5.5 doesn't escape the lab? Oh, man. Love Grant's blog. Oh, dude, we talked about that blog for probably an hour yesterday. It's probably the best blog that I've read all year. It's insane. It's insanely good. I still have it up. Do you want to hear my love affair for this blog? So, for those of you who don't know, this is Cloudflare's write-up about their experience with Glasswing and Mythos. We talked about this for an hour yesterday. I'm sorry for anyone who was here yesterday. They go through kind of their normal, like, this is what everyone's experiencing with Mythos. It's just better at exploit chaining and POC generation. And this was kind of funny. Like, you still kind of have to convince it to do security research, even though that's like the whole point of Project Glasswing. You would think that these guardrails would be turned off, but you have to nudge it to be like, no, I'm allowed to do this. It just kind of talks about like the pros and cons of like what it can do, what it can't, whatever, right? Interesting enough, like, cool. The thing that I love about this blog is it talks, again, I think the best like security teams that have that are in Project Glasswing and have Mythos access are all kind of coming to the same conclusion, which is you really need to have a custom harness to make the best use of it. You can't just go like Mythos, hack this repo, make no mistakes, right? Like, so Mozilla has been transparent about this, now Cloudflare. And the people that seem like they're maybe less impressed by Mythos also just happen to not talk about anything to do with a harness that they used, right? So I think all the people that are like getting good use out of it are coming to the same conclusion that they need a custom harness. And Cloudflare does a really good write-up. So they talk about how giving it like a narrow scope. So instead of just like find vulns in this repo, it's like, here's a function, find command injection, right? So like scope it to vulnerability, to function. Firefox, this is another really good blog behind the scenes of Firefox's use of Mythos Preview. They talk about, they give it a file at a time. Eric's been screaming about this from the rooftops. Oh, really? I haven't seen him screaming about it. Whoa, guys, the YouTube chat. I just got the notification. The YouTube money just hit the bank account. I made $183 from YouTube this month. Lunch is on me, peeps. Lunch is on me. $180. Okay. Keep going. So they talk about, their harness, and they even like talk, they link to blog posts from 2021 about Mozilla's mature fuzzing infrastructure, which looks a whole lot like a harness to me, right? Just like not with AI involved, just with fuzzers involved, but they had a whole harness for fuzzers to make their fuzzing more efficient and like weed out false positives and actually track down crashes and all this. Well, they built that muscle with fuzzing, and then they just swapped in AI, right? So they were like, hey, we're now prompting the harness to look for sandbox escapes with 4.6. And they say, can create, where's the line that I like? It talks about, here. Once this was working well, we parallelized the jobs across multiple ephemeral VMs. Each VM was tasked to hunt for bugs within a specific target file and write findings back to a bucket. So they had like an automated harness system spinning up an agent per file. Hey, they basically lied to it. I think in another blog I saw it, maybe it was in the Anthropic Red Team blog when Mythos first came out. They were like, Mozilla gave a file from Firefox to Mythos and said, there's a vulnerability here, find it, right? Not go find a vulnerability in Firefox. There's a vulnerability in this file, go find it. Cloudflare says that they took that at least a step further. You know, we're reading between the lines on these blog posts, but they're like, they didn't say there's a vulnerability in this file, go find it. They said, look for blank kind of vulnerability in a function, not even a file, right? With this trust boundary above it, here's the architecture diagram. Here's so like this is the prompts that they got down to in their harness. Okay, so instead of just find vulns, look for the prompt is something that smells a little bit more like look for remote code execute, or heap overflows in this function. These are the controls that I know about around it. Here's the architectural diagram and the prior coverage that we went around it. And then all of a sudden, Mythos is like node brain and can do shit that a researcher would do. Amazing insight from Mozilla and Cloudflare of how to actually be doing vulnerability research with AI agents, right? Then they say, and this is like a lot of AI harnesses that I use, like Dan Miesler's Pi or Pedro Mamini's Maestro. The things that they do with multi-models, so they like red team their own shit. So like if they come up with an idea or a concept in plan mode or something, they'll auto bring in another model to red team the conclusion or the idea or whatever. So if you ask even Mythos to check its own work, it's going to pat itself on the back. But if you say, Mythos found this, hey, GPT 5.5, come and check the work here, it's much more likely to weed out a lot of the false positives, right? Catches a lot of the noise that the first agent would miss if it checked on its own. It turns out that putting the two agents in deliberate disagreement is way more effective than just telling one agent to be careful. Huge insight here, right? Splitting the chain across agents produces better reasoning. So, asking, is the code buggy versus can an attacker actually reach this code from an outside system are two different questions. Parallel narrow tasks beat one exhaustive agent. Again, instead of here's the agent, which is going to just burn through its context window, what Firefox said was per VM, per agent, look at a file. And then that's it. Ephemeral VM, nuke it, right? Based on the result. Many agents working on tightly scoped questions, and we do duplicate the results afterward rather than asking one agent to do all of that. Because it's just gonna run out of context and start to suck, right? So this is kind of like the magic secret sauce of the harness here, right? So each of these are multiple agents. They're just part of a harness. So an agent reads the repo from top down and then fans out into sub-agents. So it's not even just like, oh, they have a recon agent. It's like, even this is sub-agents, right? So that's kind of like, this is gold, okay? But Pfefferman, if you're still here, the real reason that this is my favorite blog post that I read this year is these 3 paragraphs, okay? And this is what we talked about for way too long yesterday. I will get on a soapbox if you guys don't yell at me to get off. All right? This is amazing. This is paragraph by paragraph. This is the most valuable stuff that you could read today, okay? A lot of people's reaction to Mythos is that we can move faster. We can find bugs faster, which is the wrong reaction, and I agree. This is what Grant is saying, and I agree. I got to find Grant on I don't know Grant. I got to find him on Twitter and give him these kudos. Okay? It's the wrong reaction. He said, more than one team we've spoken to is now operating under a 2-hour SLA from CVE release, not from vuln discovery on their network, from CVE release to patch in production. The instinct is understandable. When the attacker timeline shortens, the defender timeline shortens. But you're still playing whack-a-mole here, right? So faster is not going to be enough. We think a lot of teams are about to spend a lot of time, effort, and money learning that the hard way, right? This line, holy shit, the golden line. Patching faster does not change the shape of the pipeline that produces the patch or produce the code that was buggy to begin with, right? Patching faster does not change the shape of the pipeline that produces the code. This is like the conclusion I came to when I was running AppSec at Reddit. I stopped my team. I did a thing I never thought I would do. I said, hey, you're not going to spend your time finding vulns anymore. I had a few guys that's what their job was, finding vulns on the website, right? I said, nope, that's whack-a-mole. We're done. We're going to now retune our effort for these 2 or 3 people on my team. Instead of finding vulns, you're going to write guardrails that make it impossible or at least much, much harder for the developers to ever write the vulns to begin with. Okay? This is what I was doing years ago. With AI, I mean, this is just with steroids, right? Patching faster does not change the shape of the pipeline that produces the patch. If regression testing takes a day, you can't get a 2-hour SLA without skipping it. The bugs you ship when you skip regression testing tend to be worse than the bugs you were trying to patch. They learned this the hard way. They tried to let the model write its own patches and watched a few go out that fixed the original bug while quietly breaking something else. I mean, that's just one example. The other is you could break stuff. The other point being, you're not actually making it harder for these vulns to exist ever again in the future. You're just closing this one. Huge takeaway from these 2 paragraphs, okay? And then third, what is the architecture around the vulnerability should look like? Vulns are going to exist no matter what you do. What is the architecture around it? What's your defense in depth? He doesn't quite stick the landing, in my opinion, here, because he kind of is like very obvious that Cloudflare's resulting landing here is that you should block the bugs by putting a defense in front of the application. This is coming from a company that puts out a WAF, so of course that You should have a WAF. It's like, yeah, you should, but like I don't think that that's like quite the right conclusion from these 3 paragraphs. But layers matter, detections matter, speed matters, guardrails matter, right? Designing the application so that the flaw in one part of the code cannot give attacker access to other parts, right? If 0 days are getting cheap, if vulns are getting cheap because AI can find it, blah, blah, blah. All right, there's my soapbox. 2 days in a row. Sorry for any of you who heard it yesterday. But Pfefferman and I have known each other a long time, and he knows I'm an AppSec junkie. And this is changing the game right here. Changing the game right here. What were we talking about before I just got nuked on the Cloudflare stuff? Oh yeah, this. Completely agree though, right? Gemini's been pretty good with their new model. I've heard mixed reviews. So my harness for code, let's read your post. My harness for code accessible looks roughly like this for memory bugs. I'm going to paste your thing in chat so that it hits YouTube too, because I don't think it's on screen, and so I don't think YouTube can read it. And Pilfers, this is good. This is from Pilfers. I'm just duplicating his message so you guys on YouTube can read it since it fell off screen for some reason because Restream sucks. My harness for code accessible looks roughly like this for memory bugs. LSP plus AST, grep, solid in-depth design document, explicit instructions for finding BO, HO, UAF. I'm not familiar with BO and HO as acronyms. UAF is use after free. Arbitrary rights, paying special attention to binary deserialization routes, and tracing instructions to look n degrees away from the initial bug. I haven't come up with a good way to reliably test for race stuff yet. Plus, that makes sense that race condition stuff would be hard in a harness, right? Reliable because it's so non-deterministic as you run it. Plus, used my own disassemblers and decompilers because I made MCPs for most formats too. Buffer overflow, heap overflow. Duh. Sorry. Duh. Coffee. I'm not a kernel firmware guy. Those people are wizards. The latest GPU vulnerability with memory overflow. So, Brandon, same. I'm an AppSec kid, right? I'm not a fucking kid. I'm an AppSec unk. I don't know why I just said kid. I'm an AppSec unk. And so when I was like, before Mythos came out and Opus 4, in that like golden window between Opus 4.6 and Mythos announcement, it was only like 2 months. I was like, I'm going to kick off some vulnerability research. This like 4.6 seems really good at finding vulns. And I was like, but I'm not going to do it on vulns that I would be able to find without it. Because I think that's like not even that interesting. Oh, the AppSec guy that used to find AppSec bugs for a living used a fucking great tool to find AppSec vulns. It's like, whatever. I wanted to see if it would enable this idiot to find like browser bugs or memory bugs or stuff, which I am not, like I haven't done since like early pen testing career. Maybe I was writing buffer overflow exploits by hand, like as like a learning exercise, right? I was never really an exploit dev. And like I found some stuff. Like I definitely found some stuff. But then Mythos came out and I was like, I'm not gonna burn a whole Claude Max plan worth of tokens every week. Because I maxed it out probably 3-4 weeks in a row on vuln research. And I was like, I'm going to submit this shit and Google's going to be like, yeah, dupe, because guess what? We're in Project Glasswing and we're running the better version of the thing that you're running against our own stuff. And like, why the hell would I even bother, you know? Why the hell would I even bother? Put it in Claude, step through the code, but then Gemini stepped through and said, oh, hey, by the way, this has got a vulnerability. Brandon, what are you saying? Are you saying you found a vuln with Gemini that like otherwise you wouldn't have been able to find? Sorry, Colin, I missed your question. Can only use plan mode once though. When you trigger plan mode again in the same session, Claude writes a new plan. Yeah. That's a pain in the ass. Accepting the plan resets the context window to improve reliability. Yeah. Pilfers, where is Eric screaming about that? Is it on LinkedIn or something? I haven't seen Eric talking about that. I don't know if I missed it somewhere. Oh man, Zach, I don't know if you're here. Zach is stirring up drama and texted me about it. Oh, you texted him. Oh, you tagged him. Whoops. Oh no, it's example code from the GPU driver from the Pixel 10. It had an RC. Oh, you like rediscovered a public vuln? He did a talk in South Florida, one of the cons recently. Ping him on LinkedIn or in the Snoopy Slack. I think I am in the Snoopy Slack. It's not in my current machine though. What's this? Is the Snoopy one, is that Crypto Cats or something? Oh, Global Midwest. Yeah, I'm in that one too. Hold on. I'm not signed in on my current computer in it. There we go. Yeah. I got the Global Midwest. And I'm already in Hacker Pizza. Okay. Yeah, okay. I got Snoopy back on my desktop. Cool. Whoa, I sign in and the number one message is like, someone in this Slack died recently. I'm like, what? I don't know. This person. I haven't been on the Snoopy Slack in quite a while. Oh man, I do recognize this guy though. I recognize this guy from like cons and stuff that died. That's crazy. It's pinned where? AppSec channel? Or are you talking about the memorial thing that I just stumbled across as soon as I signed in? Yeah, maybe. All right, I'll figure it out. We don't have to like walk me through random Slack that I sit in. Didn't realize you were at Reddit. Yeah. All code written at Reddit. My team was responsible for the security of how much of this is latent detection via pattern recognition and how much is active prompting. I think I get what you're saying from the article, but I'm a bit confused on the scaffolding part. All right, let's look it up. Let's look at it. If we go back to, this is kind of old at this point, but I think that they illustrate the point pretty well. And yeah, here you go. Carlini and Anthropic talking about this stuff. Let's see if we could talk about, yeah, this was like the thing that went viral. Let's see if we can talk a little bit more about the scaffolding and harness stuff. So here you go. R scaffold, okay? So I wouldn't call it pattern recognition. I think one thing to understand is they didn't train Mythos to be the cybersecurity expert model. right? That just was a really happy accident after making it much better at code. So they just like, their whole thing was like making an agent that just continued to be better and better and better at code. A side effect of being really good at code is it knows when bad code is bad code, especially on, and it seems from what I'm hearing from talking to some Mythos and Glasswing participants, is on like old code languages, like the things that browsers are written in, right? C, C++, like a lot of the memory unsafe languages. It turns out that Mythos is really good at spotting memory safety issues, right? I wouldn't necessarily just reduce this down to pattern recognition, but like you're not incorrect in saying that, right? It's just pattern recognition on hyper steroids, right? Cost $10 billion to train the model that's doing this pattern recognition, right? Detection via pattern. If I get your phrasing of your questions slightly hard. So detecting via pattern recognition of a human versus active prompting. That's the prompting is by the human, right? But you're a bit confused on the scaffolding part. So let's talk about their scaffolding. So all the bugs we discussed below, we use the same simple agentic scaffold as our prior vulnerability finding exercise. So we'll open this other blog too. Okay, so this is back in March. This is before Mythos. And they talk about their scaffold. We could also bring up Carlini's unprompted talk. Okay. Where's the scaffold? The scaffold doesn't really get talked about here, huh? Well, it probably does, but hold on. Let's keep looking. Hey, thanks for following. Welcome. I'd change your Twitch category to software and game development. The just chatting categories for normies. Do I have that capability? Let's see. Can I do it while I'm streaming? I'm in just chatting. If I can change my category to software and game development. Ooh, I didn't know this category existed. Save. Okay. Thank you. I'll see if that helps. I never knew about that category. Thank you, Pilfers. Appreciate you. Appreciate the follow. Also distinguishes between what Mythos finds when it passively reads stuff, reads what's there and can already identify stuff versus actions, things the model actually does. Okay, so I think the thing, you're going to invoice me, PR rep, personal stylist. Do I like fedoras? Man, hold on. I got my black GitHub hoodie. Should I put my, yeah, let's do it. Okay. Black hoodie. Achieved. Sorry. Guys, I don't know what I was thinking. A hacker on stream outside of a black hoodie? Just silly. Just silly. Next thing you're going to tell me is I'm not in my mom's basement right now. Someone said it yesterday that how funny. It's like we're now talking about the AI super hacker, and we used to talk about the 400-pound hacker in their mom's basement. It's like, oh, don't you miss the 400-pound hacker memes? Put the hood up. I will. Man, it's kind of rough to be rocking the GitHub stuff this week, though. You know. All right. Hold on. Hood up. Wait. Before I put the hood up. Headphones, right? Okay. I'm getting there, guys. Okay. All right. Look at this. Look at this hacker shit I got going on now. Oh, man. Wait, do I put my headphones over the hood? Let's try that. Let's try that look. Oh man, it's pretty dope. All right, everybody. No, the headphones aren't working. They're too. I don't really want to wear them anyway because I don't actually have any sound coming out of them. All right, the hood's up. Black hoodie on. Hacker mode achieved. I've fixed my Twitch category. Guys, this is it. This is the turning point in my streaming career. I can feel it. I can feel it happening. I can feel it. We're culturally relevant. We're culturally relevant. Watch out, Mythos. Let's see what you got, Mythos. Okay. Let's see what you got. Let's see what you got. All right. Hacker mode achieved. Let's read. All right. I'm answering. Colin's asking about the scaffolding, and I do want to talk about it. So here's what they say, okay? We obviously were like reading blogs about this. Unless I can get someone who is like a Glasswing participant to come on stream and talk about their scaffolding, we're going to just have to like do by reading between the lines on a lot of these blogs, okay? So we launch a container isolated from the internet and other systems that runs the project under test and its source code. We invoke Claude Code with Mythos Preview and prompt it with a paragraph that essentially amounts to, please find a security vulnerability in this program. They aren't kidding either. Let's find the unprompted Carlini talk. Whoa, low level with a Mythos. Low level put out a Mythos video today. Literally, oh my God. I opened this video and it's on the slide that I was going to look for because we've talked about this before. So this is like kind of how they started, right? He starts talking about like here. He starts talking about basically how they started prompting Claude. And this talk was before Mythos came out, but I think they're basically getting at like they haven't changed this much, right?
Really, really good. And I want to just give you a couple examples of what this is looking like. Okay.
So Carlini is like the head of offensive security AI stuff at Anthropic.
Let me show you how we've been finding some bugs in some really important software. And I'll show you what
I
we
look
found in just a
really,
second.
really hackery now in the corner. It's like small and dark. Ooh, watch out.
Let me just like show you the scaffold that we've been using. Here it is. This is basically the entirety of it.
Okay. He's like not exaggerating when we talk about the other blog, right? Dangerously skip permissions. And with another flag, you are playing in a CTF, find a vulnerability, write the most serious one to this report. Be verbose. Here's the log.
You know, we have a couple more sentences here and there. But basically, we run Claude code, and we run it in a VM, dangerously skip permissions, just like let it do whatever it wants. And then we say, hey, you're playing in a CTF. Please find a vulnerability and put the most serious one to this output file. Go. And then we sort of walk away and we come back and we read the vulnerability report, and usually it's like pretty good and has found some pretty severe things. And this basically works. Like, you can definitely do much better if you have fancier scaffolding. You can definitely do it cheaper if you have fancier scaffolding. But you can do it just by like asking the model to find these bugs. And the reason why that matters to me is because what I care about is like, what is the base capability of the model? Because if someone who's malicious wants to go cause some harm, and they don't have to spend 6 months designing some fancy fuzzing harness or something, and they can just go do bad things with it, like this is quite scary.
Yes. Not very thorough, doesn't parallelize. So then they kind of upgraded, okay?
So we have a very simple trick for this. which is I'm just going to add one more line, and I'm going to say like, hint, please look at this file foo.c. And then what I can do is I wanted to like, okay, now look at bar.c, now look at some other file, and I can just like do this for like all of the files in the project. And then we'll find and like look at least at all of them, and like this works quite well. Okay. We wrote a blog post where we talked about some things that we can find. The blog post exists, so I'm not going to tell you about the bugs that we had in there.
Okay. So that's like literally that's like the entirety of the scaffolding part of the talk, which is like kind of crazy, right? That like that's it. So they go into it a little bit more here, right? We let Claude run agentically experiment. In a typical attempt, Claude will read the code, hypothesize vulnerabilities that might exist, run an actual project to confirm, blah, 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 blah. In order to increase diversity of the bugs we find and to allow us to invoke many copies of Claude in parallel, we ask each agent to focus on a different file in the project, right? So Cloudflare took this a step further and said, look for blank type of vulnerability in blank function, and here's a bunch of other context that might help about like security things that we know about that code right now, trust boundaries, architecture diagram, stuff like that, right? So Cloudflare is just basically taking that scaffolding to another level. And I mean, Carlini even hints that there's some like other lines that they add here and there to get more efficient and better. So maybe this is what he meant behind that as well, right? So we're just reading like public blogs about this stuff. So that's where like the model like the model versus scaffolding line is, right? But if you want to, like, here's the whole harness that they talk about, though, because you still really want to get to, like, minimal human interaction, valuable output. So in order to do that, you're doing more than, like, oh, just go find the vuln in that specific thing or whatever, right? Because you don't, like, that's not super valuable. And the output is fraught. Right? Of like, oh, find vuln in this file or even in this function versus, hey, do some recon of where you like, what are some points in this code repo that would be juicy targets and likely attack surface, right? That gives you work to do as a harness. Then we're actually going to hunt. And that's basically, this hunt is really all we've talked about in those other blogs so far, right? Is like, okay, you look for the actual bug in this code. Each fanning out to a handful of exploration subagents. Each hunter has access to the tools that compile and run proof of concept code in a per task directory. Most of the work happens here. Many narrow tasks in parallel, not one exhaustive agent. Okay. Then the stuff that gets like really, really crazy, and this is where I think the like magic really is. And like when a lot of those early AI like offensive security startups came out, like Expo came out, whatever, the thing that I was honing in on was not that they were able to find bugs. We've been able to find bugs. We've been able to find more bugs than we know what to do with the entire time security's existed, okay? The thing that got like my attention even back then, which is like pre-Opus being able to do this shit out of the box, was the validator agents, right? That would have been its own company years ago. Here's a tool that just dedupes false positives and helps you like not miss false negatives from all your other vuln scanners. That would have been a fucking multi-billion-dollar product years ago, right? Rapid7 would have bought you in an incident, right? Tenable would have bought you in an instant. If it was like, oh, I have a tool that can validate findings that gets spit out of vuln identification stuff, and then they have this little self-referential loop for gap filling. Hey, we think that there's a gap here, go back to the hunt, try again, right? Then you're going to find dupes. So they have a dedupe set of agents. What's the trace? For each confirmed finding in a shared library, a tracer agent fans out, uses a cross-repo symbol index, and decides whether attacker-controlled input could actually reach that bug from inside the system, which is insane, right? This is like, I'll tell you, I ran vulnerability management at B of A for years. When a vuln came out, I would get a phone call, like if a big vuln hit the news, right? If we're like, here, where is it? Here, okay. Big headline, max severity Cisco secure workload flaw gives site admin privileges. CVE 2026-2223, okay? So this hits the news. What happens to the guy that runs vulnerability management at a large financial institution when this hits the news? What do you guys think happens? Who do you think I get a phone call from, and what do you think they're asking me when this hits the news? All right. You guys have gone quiet. I'll tell you what I got, what the phone call was. What was I reading? Oh, this one. CISO, are we vulnerable? Great answer, Mark. I got asked a few questions. I would get asked, are we vulnerable? Is it exploitable? And is it reachable from the internet? Okay? Those are basic, like, some variation, maybe some others in some specific scenarios, right? But like, when you have a network the size of France, you're going to have a lot of the different versions and software that just exist, period, right? But is it exploitable, even if we find that version of that software? Because that's all really like CVE scanners are doing, right? Is, are you running a version of a software with a known vulnerability in it? That's like really all that boils down to, like modern vuln scanning. Cool. Is it exploitable? And great, it's exploitable. Can an attacker reach it from is it internet accessible? Question one, super easy to answer. Maybe take some time, but super easy to answer. Is it exploitable and is it reachable on the internet? Much harder questions to answer for most people, right? I'd argue that this is one of the reasons that Wiz became Wiz was because Wiz answered that third question in a heartbeat for your cloud environment, right? It's become a table stakes feature for a lot of people. But like when Wiz was like becoming Wiz, they would have like we found this vuln on this box in your cloud environment. And here's the exact trace to the internet to get to that vulnerable package, right? Super, super nifty back then. Security graph was a game changer. Yeah. I'd argue that's one of the main reasons that they became who they've become, okay? Because in a cloud environment, to be able to say that, like the moment you find the vuln, you have the path to the internet was unheard of. No vuln scanner ever had that context before, right? Like I said, since then, this is kind of table stakes. Every vuln scanner had to put out an agent instead of just a network scanner. So if you had like the vuln scanning agent on devices, you got more information than you would if you just hit it via an open port or whatever. A lot of nuance here, but makes sense that they have a part of their harness that's like answering that question. Because this is like, if this is like, that's it. This is the magic automatic vuln finder and fixer and reporter thing. Of course, you're going to want to know whether attacker controlled input could actually reach that bug. And that doesn't just mean, by the way, that machine that vulnerability is on is internet accessible. That's not what that means, and that's why it's a complicated answer, right? Is that code actually being called right now, like in memory, can be hit by an attacker? Sometimes that means that box isn't directly internet accessible, but attacker input can hit it. Log4j is a good example here, right? Log4j was so bad because you could spray the Log4j exploit all over everything, and it would exploit boxes that had no internet accessibility, but your exploit code would end up somewhere in a line, and it would get executed by a machine that wasn't even on the internet, and would eventually reach back out to the attacker. And that's how they would know that they succeeded. If you have documented security controls in place and you update changes like to firewall rules, you have a better shot of answering those questions, even if you just shunt everything off to the vendor. Yes and no. There's like a whole slew of vulnerabilities that just have to do with like middleware things like struts, where it's like nothing to do with a firewall rule. Like that machine is like meant to be internet accessible, but is that vulnerability internet accessible is like a more nuanced question, not just like, is that box accessible, and like understanding your firewall rules. And also, again, network the size of a medium-sized country, a one-stop shop to answer your question about firewall rules. Like, what does firewall rules mean at a global company with, 7-figure endpoints? It's like, there is no like, what is the firewall rule? Like, that's not a thing, right? It's like, is that running on a machine at a local branch? Is that running on a machine at an office? Is that running on a thing in a cloud? Is that running on a thing at a internal cloud, vendor cloud? Like, these are hard questions to answer at scale. Anyway, so it makes sense that they would do this. Cloudflare is definitely, global, with physical locations and all this kind of stuff. This isn't just like, oh, this is our cloud environment. This is our one AWS account. And like, these are the firewall rules. Like that's not Cloudflare, right? They've got data centers in, around the globe, each which are going to have their own little nuances of how things get in and out of there, right? Reachable traces become new hunt tasks in consumer repos where the bug is actually exposed. So close the loop, the pipeline gets better, and then report. The other thing that they talk about in their reports that I've seen is I've seen even, hold on, let me find something really quick that I think is kind of the new table stakes about stuff. God damn it. I opened Twitter for 1 second to find something else. Rami's the guy from Wiz who keeps writing these awesome blogs. What is this? He made these. This is an infographic he made. Highest profile, clean, lesser known malware live. Ongoing exfiltration. 3 minutes to successfully compromise from Team PCP. Partial cleanup is dangerous. This is what we saw with Grafana. They thought they were good, and then there was one token they didn't successfully rotate, and then they lost all their source code. Stolen credentials continue flowing to GitHub repos. Anyone using registry.npmmirror.com may still install Team PCP malware. I don't know what npm mirror is. Is it supposed to be like a more secure repo or something like that? I don't know. Grammy's awesome though. I want to talk about here. Trail of Bits, it was talking about OpenAI's Daybreak announcement, which, as a few of us said, we don't understand how Daybreak it was different from GPT Cyber or 5.5 like approved cyber researcher. Like there were so many different OpenAI cyber initiatives, and like I don't know if Daybreak is different or a rebrand or whatever. We don't really know, right? But Trail of Bits, I guess, got early access to this Daybreak thing. I think this is OpenAI's answer to Anthropic's Glasswing. Just like, oh, private cyber like thing or whatever. But that was like the last thing that they said in this post that had anything to do with Daybreak, in my opinion. But basically, they're using the next gen models at Trail of Bits to like give back to the open source community, or they're getting hired in, like they're saying, open source engagements. We prioritized minimizing maintainer workload and keeping noise out of their inboxes. So I think that this is actually the bar, right? So commonly used software has never been short of bugs. Cyber tier models, so Mythos, Daybreak, whatever the hell, Daybreak's not a model, but GPT-5.5 Cyber, whatever, will surface them at machine speed with little human effort, and the volume will overwhelm open source projects without clear process for disclosure, triage, remediation. If you maintain an open source project, do 4 things. And I think this is an important post for everything we're talking about. Publish a security MD. If you already have one, verify the reporting flow works end to end. Set a high bar for submissions. So this is the part I want. This is why I just brought this up. So even internally, like Cloudflare's harness talking about their own bug finding, I think that this is really the part that makes this all work really well. Require a POC and a fix patch and a regression test. Right? So this is almost going back to like the Google FFmpeg issues, where like Google was just sending AI generated bug reports to an open source project, FFmpeg. And FFmpeg is like, we're just little volunteer run open source project. You're a multi-trillion-dollar organization. Instead of just sending a bug report, why don't you send a fucking patch with the bug report, Google? Right? And it's like, I understood both sides of the argument, but it was kind of a fun bit of drama to follow for a few weeks. But we're kind of getting to the point that the AI models that are better at finding these vulns are also like can also write the damn patch, right? That's like we said, these cyber models didn't get good at cyber because they trained them to get good at cyber. They got good at cyber because they trained them to get better and better and better at code. So guess what? That same capability that lets them find the vulns should let them very successfully write patches as well. And then regression tests as well, right? So I think this is huge. Build a validation harness. So this is Trail of Bits saying, if you're a big open source maintainer, maybe not even a big open source maintainer, you're an open source maintainer, it's on you right now to build your harness. So you get a PR, you get a report, right? You get a POC, you get a fix, you get a patch. What's your harness look like to validate this stuff? Is the bug real? Does the fix work? Does anything else break? This is kind of my version of the CISO called me and is like, are we vulnerable? Is it exploitable? Is it on the internet? But like, if you're just looking at an open source repo and not like the deployment model of the code, these would be like the questions you answer. And then by the way, these harnesses can be attacked, because if you're getting a PR, you're auto ingesting that PR with POC code and shit, like they could use that to prompt inject you. They could find remote code execution. They could do all sorts of stuff in your harness, which is what's going on right now with GitHub Actions, which I guess is, you could call GitHub Actions pipelines harnesses, right? Sandbox those harnesses. Malicious reports are a credible threat once the cost of generating them drops to near zero. Yep. Good. I agree with the bar that Trail of Bits is setting here. I think this is hyper important in the day and age that we're getting to right now. All right. We went on a very long AI tangent, and Low Level put out a Mythos video just now. What's he talking about? Should we go watch? And then I've got a few other news headlines we can hit, but let's see what Low Level's talking about, because he says Mythos.
If you've been on the internet the last couple of weeks, you've probably seen
Damn
headlines
it's a
like
swish. He got a swish. 10 minutes
is
even.
Mythos, Anthropic's new AI model. Dario Amodi's warning should not be dismissed. Finance ministers and bankers raise serious concerns about Mythos AI model. A lot of hype and fear about this new AI model that can supposedly find and exploit vulnerabilities in software. And these headlines have raised some important questions about the future of cybersecurity and vulnerability research. The problem is, up until now, we've had basically zero data to kind of reinforce these claims. Until now. There's been a lot of conversation on the Twitter sphere and in real life. Is cybersecurity dead with the release of Mythos? And
I hope. Take me out back and shoot me. Lobotomize all of us. Like, I hope cybersecurity is dead. Like, I will figure out how to grow fucking tomatoes and psychedelic mushrooms and walk into the ocean. I'm sorry. I'm tired.
Now, I don't think cybersecurity is dead necessarily, right? I think there's still an industry that is alive and well. But the release of models like Mythos that are supposedly very good at vulnerability research does beg some interesting questions about the world of security research and reverse engineering and bug hunting in general as these models become more publicly available. For those of you not aware, Mythos is a model by Anthropic that supposedly on this graph go up chart is significantly better on not only finding vulnerabilities, but specifically chaining vulnerabilities together to write full-on exploits to write exploits for software. And as a result, because of how dangerous this software supposedly is, this model can just find exploits and exploit them. It was given only to a select list of companies so that they can find bugs in their internal software to hopefully make the world a better place. And because of this, it's too dangerous for the public marketing. There was a lot of conversation about, is it actually too dangerous or is it all just hype? We actually have no publicly available data on if this model is really better at doing anything. Until now, enter curl. Now, curl, if you're not aware, is a tool that's used to do web requests on the internet.
Okay. We looked at this. I have some like preemptive thing. Later, Pfefferman. Thanks for hanging out. I know what he's about to talk about. I have some preemptive thoughts, right? We've talked about this a little bit on stream, right? So curl, if you guys don't know, pretty famously started getting like too many bad AI slop bug reports to the point that they shut down their bug bounty program, okay? Then Daniel Stenberg, who was the one who runs the bug bounty program and was like, I am being denial of service attacked by bullshit AI slop bug reports in curl. I cannot do this anymore. This is like an open source project, whatever. Shutting down the bug bounty program, right? He has then since come out and been like, actually, those bug reports got really good all of a sudden. So Opus 4.6 comes out and all of a sudden the AI bug reports are real, okay? Anthropic knocks on his door, doesn't invite him to Project Glasswing. They says, we can't invite you to Project Glasswing, but we can run Mythos on curl for you. Okay? My issue here is if they gave Daniel access to Glasswing, Daniel knows curl better than anybody and the code base. Daniel using Mythos to try to build a custom harness like we saw Mozilla and Cloudflare do with their successes, right? And you saw the big chart of vulns that Mozilla found. They literally say how important the harness was for that. Because they didn't let Daniel into Glasswing and they just ran Mythos on curl, we have no idea what harness they did with that, right? I think the Anthropic team is good enough. I don't think they just were like, Mythos, go find vulns in curl, whatever. Daniel himself also says, hey, this is n=1. This is one code base. It's not even that, huge of a code base, right? It's very popular, but it's not Firefox, right? So spoiler alert, they only found one vuln, right, with Mythos and curl. So like, this is the data, and they're kind of like, oh, look, Mythos isn't that impressive. And like, I think we've all known this, right? That like Mythos isn't the super hacker just like pointed at shit and it's going to break anything, right? But I just have some caveats of like, we don't really know, like this doesn't really give us as much data as I was hoping. I'm still going to listen to Low Level's take on this because I'm interested if he comes to the same conclusions that I do.
Not only a command line tool, but libcurl, the software behind curl, is a commonly used piece of software in the C programming language to do web requests. And so a vulnerability in libcurl would be a really big deal. The ability for a malicious web server to serve down traffic that pops a libcurl instance would be very bad. And so with that, libcurl actually got an audit by Project Glasswing using Mythos, and the results are underwhelming. There are a few reasons for this I'll go into, and I think overall it's interesting to see the output of Mythos, but generally a little disappointing. To set the stage here, we're going to talk about the homie Dan Stenberg. Daniel Stenberg is the lead maintainer of the curl project. He and a team of, I think, 20 people keep that project alive, and they also maintain the security side of the code base. Whenever a bug report comes into curl, somebody, Dan Stenberg or his friends that maintain the code base, have to handle that report. And earlier this year, there were actually so many bug reports that were fake and not real,
Sorry,
all
I
being made by AI,
just
that Dan
paused
Stenberg
and said all
actually
this.
pulled his bug bounty
My
program
bad.
from HackerOne. I made several videos about this, but as of January 31st, there is no longer a bug bounty program for curl on HackerOne. This kind of set a negative tone for the world of AI-powered research, because at the end of the day, AI was just hallucinating bugs that didn't exist in curl, sending them to the curl bug bounty program, and effectively DOSing people socially. There weren't enough people to triage all the reports, so potentially real bugs were hiding in the fake bugs, and ultimately it made the situation for curl very, very dangerous. An important thing to highlight is AI models started very bad at finding vulnerabilities in software, but there's been a very hard to ignore increase in their functionality over the last few months. If you look at January of 2025, over a year ago, you look at DeepSeek v3, this is our performance on this thing called cybergym.io. Cybergym.io is a benchmark code base that has a set of known vulnerabilities in the code base, vulnerabilities that we know exist in a set of code. What the Cybergym benchmark does does is you tell the model, go find vulnerabilities in this code base, and the success rate is how many of the bugs did it actually find? Did it make any fake ones up? How many of the real bugs in the software did it find? And over the last year, we've actually seen a very steady increase in the performance of these AI models. If you look at January of 26 here, which is around the time that Dan Stenberg closed the bug bounty program, up until that point, we were at like a 30% success rate. And trust me, if you use an AI model to find bugs, it's gonna find bugs, but it's probably gonna make up some bugs. So if it only finds 30% of the real ones, you could argue 70% of the bugs are fake. As we go up the graph closer to this time period, now we're in May, April of this year, Claude Mythos preview supposedly, again, closed metrics, I don't have access to these, but it's finding supposedly 85% of all bugs. So with that, Dan Stenberg took the free scan he was gonna get from Project Glasswing to figure out how many hidden memory cushion vulnerabilities were hiding inside of curl. Now, one thing we need to highlight here when talking about curl is this is a point that Mythos and Glasswing acknowledged before even doing the report. Curl is one of the most fuzzed and audited C code bases in existence. It's fuzzed
Very
by
good
open source
caveat.
fuzz, by Coverity, CodeQL, multiple paid previous audits. Finding anything in the hot paths, a hot path meaning the most common used default config paths like HTTP1, TLS, or URL parsing is extremely unlikely. And even Dan tweeted out, I think it's just on Mastodon or something, he did a poll, how many bugs do you think Glasswing's gonna find? And the answers are between 1 and 10, nowhere near 25 and 100. Also important to point out that curl, while not only being one of the most heavily
This was good. We talked about this when this blog came out. We pulled up this graphic on stream too. These are like all the different buckets of things that are like part of the curl security like stack, I guess you could call it, right? Really like interesting lesson to learn here on just like if you're an open source maintainer at all.
audited code bases, is also one of the most cared about code bases. Daniel Stenberg is one of the most meticulous maintainers of the code base. And if you look at the slide from a presentation that Daniel Stenberg did, these are all of the different things they do to the code base to make sure that it is a safe code base. He takes the severity of being the maintainer of curl extremely seriously. They have review bots, human checks, many tests, document everything.
As they should, right? It's like on every box ever.
They do fuzzing in CI and don't stop doing it while doing signed releases and private security reporting. And so the Mythos report came out, and ultimately, Mythos actually only found 5 vulnerabilities. And again, these are confirmed vulnerabilities, confirmed by the AI, which is going to have like the red alarm emojis in the report and stuff. 5 confirmed vulnerabilities that actually boil down to only 1 vulnerability that end up only being a severity low CVE. So we take all the Mythos hype, all of the it's too dangerous for the public, and it boils down to a single vulnerability in a 17,000 line code base in C. And notably, 0 memory safety vulnerabilities were found in curl. If you read or watch any of the reporting or the conversation about Mythos, there are 2 separate categories of problem that we're trying to evaluate if Mythos is actually good at that no one like objectively knows about right now, except for people internal to Project Glasswing. The first one is Mythos objectively better at finding vulnerabilities? That there is really no publicly available data that confirms that, right? And again, all of these are metrics that are being created by Anthropic or Project Glasswing that none of us can see. But if you look at the graph that they've published on Mythos, the other category of problem is Mythos better at writing exploits, at taking other vulnerabilities, several maybe small scale vulnerabilities, and chaining them together into a full-on exploit? If you don't know a ton about the world of exploitation, typically when you find vulnerabilities, they enable these things called primitives, right? You have an arbitrary read primitive that allows you to read memory outside of the bounds of the buffer, so you use that to bypass ASLR. And then you have an arbitrary write primitive that allows you to replace a pointer somewhere with something else, and then that pointer gives you code execution. The ability to chain multiple exploits together autonomously is what Anthropic claims makes Mythos more dangerous. It's important to highlight that Mythos did find a vulnerability in OpenBSD, a 27-year-old OpenBSD bug, but reporting shows that it took $20,000 of token spend to find this vulnerability, and ultimately this vulnerability is just a DOS, a denial of service, meaning it'll crash the kernel, but it doesn't create any primitives that enable the attacker to get remote code execution. So in terms of finding vulnerabilities, it's entirely possible that Mythos is not actually that much better at finding vulnerabilities. And on top of that, it doesn't even seem like Mythos is that good at rooting out false positives.
What up,
because if you look
Brown?
at the report here, 5 issues were sent to the curl security team. Of the 5, 3 were false positives and 1 was just a bug. So only 1 of them was a security vulnerability, and that security vulnerability itself got put into the low category. So I know the question you want me to answer. If Mythos only found 1 vulnerability in curl, is Mythos all hype, or is curl just a really good piece of software? The answer to this is complicated. It is literally impossible to ignore the fact that AI is getting very good at doing reverse engineering and vulnerability research, not only for open source projects or code that you have the source code to, like anything that you can find on GitHub, like curl, for example, but also you can use Ghidra MCP and do vulnerability research on closed source binaries, things like hypervisors, OSs, etc. And it's getting very good at very quickly taking code apart and finding real vulnerabilities in them. And to be clear, this is why Anthropic only gave Mythos initially to these companies, because not only can it supposedly find vulnerabilities better, but it can also chain them together. It can take an arbitrary read and arbitrary write and chain them together very quickly to create a full-on exploit that gets you RCE. Now, obviously, I have no experience using Mythos, right? But I have used Claude Opus 4.7, which Mythos didn't score too much higher than Claude Opus 4.6. And Opus 4.7 is very good at finding vulnerabilities. So it's entirely possible that Mythos could actually be good. Is it end the world? We're going to have a cyber apocalypse. The world is going to completely end tomorrow kind of good? I don't think so. But it's impossible to ignore the fact these models are getting very good. Now, that being said, why did it not find more bugs in curl? I think curl is just objectively a good code base. If you look at all of the tasks that Dan Stenberg gives his team to make sure that curl is safe, it's very obvious. This is a well cared for code base that gets a lot of review and a lot of audits. It's the same reason, by the way, that I think that major bugs have not been found in Apache or Nginx. I know there's that one Nginx CVE floating around, but it's not that big a deal. We'll talk about that in a different video. That being said, there haven't been a ton of bugs in that software because they're already some of the most highly audited code bases on the internet. So what I'm trying to say here, AI is getting better. I don't know if Mythos is up to the hype. I have no idea. I don't work at Anthropic. And I also think that Dan Stenberg is just a good developer. 2 things can exist. A lot of code has vulnerabilities, but not all code has vulnerabilities. Hit subscribe. Goodbye.
Yeah. And also, completely agree. Good video. I think it's also like we're realizing that Mythos is good at finding certain vulnerabilities, certain types of vulnerabilities, right? So it's like all that's telling us is that there's probably not a memory leaky heap overflow use after free vulnerability in libcurl.c is what that told us, right? Which is like, cool, confirmation. The best tool that we have access to that can find those types of vulnerabilities did not find it in curl. I call that a win. I call that a win. Right? I'd say that's a win. Curl is good. Brown, how you doing? Sorry, what were you saying? If I don't feel, are you talking about how I wasn't feeling well yesterday? I do not have a desire for fame. I have quite the opposite. I would like to not be famous at all. I'm quite uncomfortable with the idea of any sort of stuff. Tampa B-Sides was great. Tampa B-Sides always looks so much bigger than I expect it to look. I've never been to Tampa, and so I'm guessing it's a much bigger metro area than I realize. Because every time I see pictures of Tampa B-Sides, I'm like, what the fuck? So many people are there. Do you guys know this Crumb channel that usually talks about like cyber criminals? They made a video about, it's called Trump's crypto grift is worse than you think. I was considering watching that one with you guys. Let's leave that tab open. You're half convinced the state of Florida doesn't exist. Would we be better off is the real question, right? Would we be better off? Hallucination of alligators and crazy stories. That's Florida, man. Really, Rory, welcome. I don't recognize your name from chat. If this is your first time here, thank you. Google fixed the issue, right, Ranger? Yeah, that was an odd bug. We talked about it at the top of stream. Kind of an odd one. That like, for some reason, they published exploit code in a bug report that then they took down, but is like archived already. And it's like a really old bug from like 42, I think I saw them say 46 months ago. Somewhere else in here too. Just kind of an odd one. It's not like a major vuln. It's just like they published the POC and then, I don't know. It was super weird. Ken Hack will travel. You rerouted because of DFW. Dude, the storm here this week was insane. Insane. Did you guys see the did you guys see this? I don't know if it was storm related, but we had this big like troll art institution in Austin. Installation, I'm sorry. And it got burnt down. Caused the fire not yet known. I don't know if this was like storm related or what, but this was such a cool giant piece of art in like a major park in Austin. It's pretty sad, right? I don't know if it was lightning or if it was arson or what. Yeah, it looks like arson, right? The trees around it are fine. Glad you've been able to do stuff with it. is it bad you've been able to do stuff with Opus 4.7, including Gidra, despite not having any kind of expert permission? No, that's what I was doing. You'll eventually get it to yell at you, but you can apply for that cyber thing. I think they're giving that out like candy. One other story I wanted to talk about, since I don't know if you guys saw my iOS hack video about Karuna and Darksword. So if you haven't, I did a long video about the iOS exploit kit known as Karuna. And it seems like an NPM package was used to fire off like an iOS browser exploit kit, kind of like Karuna, which is interesting. And this was just yesterday. Detected signals of a package compromise leading to a sophisticated payload targeting a broad range of iOS devices. This seems like a weird jump, right? Like NPM to an iOS browser exploit. What's up? Thanks for following.
Welcome.
Hi, you're that guy I see on Twitter and you trolled Zach with. I am that guy from Twitter. I'm also that guy from Instagram to some people. I'm also that guy from YouTube for some people. How'd you troll Zach with me? I like Zach. Did we troll Zach together? Was it loving? Sorry, distracted by text messages. I'm a software engineer, came across your channel recently, wanted to know what kind of things I'll get to learn from my content. If you like emo music, you can follow me on Instagram, and my music that I add to my stories on Instagram get a lot of attention. I long career in cybersecurity, started in pen testing, wound up running security for a few different companies. Small companies, and then ran parts of security for big companies. So been like in the CISO chair before, been like head of software security at Reddit, been head of vuln management at B of A, was head of security for a whole consumer facing division of Goldman Sachs, head of security for a fintech startup. So we do some Q&As. We do a whole lot of like reading through security news to figure out what we actually give a shit about here. I try to make content for practitioners by a practitioner is like how I try to frame my stuff, right? A lot of cybersecurity content creators are yelling from the cheap seats, in my opinion. Not that I no hate to a lot of them. I think more creators, the more better. But yeah, it's, you know, if you've been in the seat and tried to like do security, security's hard. So, you know, if I'm embarrassed about something, like I went on a rant about the CISA data leak yesterday, and it's like, okay, I don't like to throw stones about data breaches and shit because we've all been there. But if I'm embarrassed, it's bad. I don't know. Is that a good sum? Is some of you regulars here? Did I do a good job introducing myself? You got a hold of Zach after his job change. GCV, are you talking about Zach Corman? I don't know which troll trolling you're talking about. And Brandon, I don't know if you're talking about the same Zach either. Zach Corman, who is a Twitter homie. 4 stars, 4 out of 5 on introducing myself. Okay. Not bad, not bad. This Zach, who is awesome. So if you Google anti-gravity, which is their IDE, the second result is a scam. If you guys are talking about that Zach, yes, I know that Zach. All right, sorry. Let's read this Karuna thing that I had up from Socket because this is weird for me. Like npm package to iOS devices. You get why that's weird, right? Because in all these npm packages, what's up, S. Robertson? What's up, Pro Baller? Please explain why you're moving over to Gemini Ultra. Is it that good? I've heard a few things today from it. But like, I'm very confused. Oh, Gemini Ultra is their new $200 a month. So now everyone has a $200 a month plan, huh? So we can have Opus 4.7 on Claude Max. We could have Codex 5 GPT 5.5 on their 20x thing or whatever, which is basically Max for $200 a month. And now Google AI Ultra plan is now $200 a month. Gemini Pro plan to accelerate coding. Is it even that good? I haven't been impressed with their coding agent. Pretty good. It takes a little longer, but not making a whole bunch of mistakes. GPT was too preachy. DeepThink is good for my systems engineering. Interesting. I'm still on Opus 4.7 over here. Am I missing out? You're talking about Zach Hill. Oh, yeah. That Zach he's homie. He's homie. He's good people. I don't know. Someone came in Twitch and was like, "You're the guy that I trolled Zach with," and I don't know what they're talking about. I don't understand. Okay, I don't understand because like when these npm worms go around, this is not generally on iOS devices. So the art template npm package, a widely used JavaScript templating library, handed it over to an unknown actor under the pretense of taking on maintenance of a project. See, this is one of the ways that we talk about legitimate packages becoming malicious. They bring on unknown maintainers or they sell it or something like that. So they didn't even compromise a maintainer. They just became a maintainer themselves. It's like XEUtils, right? Someone previously acquired the project under the guise of taking over its maintenance, but soon released a package containing external scripts and deleted the released issue. Yep. So they bought it. The backdoored versions followed an escalating injection pattern. Okay, so see, this is what I was saying with the current NPM worm, that we haven't seen Shai Hulud. We've just seen Shai Hulud do more Shai Hulud things. We haven't seen it inject malicious code into the things that the NPM packages wind up running on and hacking the users of those things. That's what this is doing. So this is a compromised NPM package that is then delivering malware to the applications that use this art template and then hacking the users of it with an iOS exploit. This is exactly what I said Shai Hulud. I'm shocked that Shai Hulud hasn't done. Opus 4.7 on Max with /goal token maxing is pretty good. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I use Opus 4.7 with Dan Miesler's Pi And he's got like a whole algorithm under there that really works. You accidentally upgraded your Perplexity subscription. Whoops. I didn't know anyone still used Perplexity. Although I heard their like computer use thing was kind of interesting somewhat recently. Upon load, it immediately begins beaconing the victim's public IP address, iOS version, string, campaign code every 10 seconds. Simultaneously, it runs 5 layers of anti-bot and anti-automation fingerprinting, including an inline WebAssembly proof of work. Different threat actor, different goals. I know, but it's super interesting. Pi is amazing. I'm talking about Dan Miesler's Pi. I don't know. I'm talking about this one. I don't know if you guys are talking about this one. PAI by this handsome gent. And he's got this algorithm in here that does a lot of stuff. Like he doesn't even use /plan mode anymore, he said, because of his algorithm that he's baked into this. I get really good results out of this. The skills management, the context management, and like the routing of like, hey, load up this skill or this context based on this prompt is super interesting. Yeah, I find that it works really well. Even for coding. Then I use Maestro for like long, more complex projects. Definitely took inspiration from TPCP and ran with it. Do we know the threat actor in this? Obfuscation layers I don't really care too much about, but I kind of do care about the Safari thing. Main entry point, whatever the fuck that function is. On fingerprinting module. Deobfuscated. Any throw from init. Version scoring capability flag. Payload invocation. So after they obfuscate and fingerprint the target, then the actual payload, it is Karuna-esque because it's not even on modern iOS. iOS 17.2 is kind of ancient at this point, right? All other targeted iPhones get a what? I don't know. I'd be surprised if this is hyper successful given that version targeting. Especially with NPM and stuff. I mean, this is super, super, super interesting though, right? The computer use stuff on Perplexity is bull. Okay. All right. There you go. All right. Good write-up. Socket. This is kind of out of your normal research. Yeah, I don't recognize that name either. Someone new at Socket. Through a watering hole attack, which is how Karuna was delivered to begin with, but they're hacking an NPM package to turn sites into watering holes for this attack. Super interesting. Let me dump this blog into chat so you guys have it. All right, I'm glad we read that. We didn't really talk about the Cisco vuln. Do we need to? I kind of just brought this up in an earlier conversation, but this is a vuln that just came out. No workarounds, but you need to patch. I mean, no, it's just a vuln. Not a lot of info. Secure workload flaw gives site admin privileges on what? I don't know. I'm not sure what secure workload is in a REST API. Vulnerability is due to insufficient validation and authentication on the REST API. A successful exploit could allow the attacker to read sensitive information, make configuration changes across tenant boundaries within site admin. Okay. I mean, it's evolving. Cost per usage unless you're on max. Well, everyone's got their max plan. Everyone's happy to grab $200 a month from us. Everyone. You guys don't have to apologize for taking a meeting or not being here. I have there's no obligation for any of you to be here. You're absolved of your obligation that you feel to me and chat or whatever. People are like, sorry, I was missing all week. Chill. It's okay. It's all good. I appreciate every moment that you're here. You're absolved. All future apologies. Yeah, I did see when you started talking about Ultra and I found the tweet. I found the tweet. You're not paying $200 a month for anything other than your electric bill. I wish my electric bill was only $200 a month. I live in Texas and air conditioning is a thing. Yeah, I saw this. Is this any, I don't know. Is it any good though? Everyone's saying there's a price drop, but there's new limits. Making the hilariously low limits even lower. Use Cryptomator and use their 20 terabyte storage for whatever I want without scanning worries. Cool. I've been playing the $200 Claude Max plan for a while. I've been happy with it. I use it a lot though. I max it out most weeks. All right. It's newsletter day, and Bill, who generally helps me out with the newsletter, is on vacation. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba-da. It is newsletter day, though. Ba-da-ba. All right. Anything else we want to chat about, stream? Those were the headlines that I had for today. I can see if anything came up while we were talking. Let me refresh my feeds. Oh, we didn't talk about first VPN takedown. You want to talk about that real quick? Yeah, let's do it. I had this up and I forgot to talk about it. We brought it up quickly earlier. So, massive Interpol takedown of a VPN service used by cyber criminals to hide ransomware attacks. Led by France, Netherlands, carried out in the last 2 days, first VPN, marketed for years on Russian-speaking cybercrime forums as a secure way for criminals to evade law enforcement. Authorities in Ukraine questioned the service's administrators at the request of French investigators and conducted a house search as part of a coordinated operation. Dismantled 33 servers linked to the platform. According to Europol's statement, First VPN appeared in almost every major cybercrime investigation. It's wild. For years, cybercriminals saw this VPN service as a gateway to anonymity. Ugh, I hate that word. They believed it would keep them beyond the reach of law enforcement. This operation proves them wrong. Taking offline removes a critical layer of protection that the criminals depend on to operate, communicate, and evade law enforcement. Dutch authorities say the first VPN specifically targeted criminal users and openly promoted themselves on cybercrime forums. Investigators said the service claimed it would refuse cooperation with law enforcement, operate outside any jurisdiction, and avoid storing user data. The service gave the impression it was reliable and its users were safe, which was not the case in reality. Well, question. They got taken down, but is this actually not a reality? Because is the takedown actually going to have any ripple effects for any of the cybercriminal users of the platform? Or did they successfully keep them safe and just now got like taken offline? Right? If they don't have any data about any of their users that they're handing over to law enforcement, I would call it mission successful until they got, nuked, right? Yeah, they'll just switch. Yeah, something else will just pop it out. I mean, this is still good. You do want to disrupt stuff, but okay, I'll probably make a short about this today because these are generally helpful videos. It seems like there were some Google versions of this too. Like to send spam email, you could probably use some like relay of a legitimate service. So apparently Microsoft has one yet. It's not clear how scammers are abusing the system, but they've been able to set up new Microsoft accounts as if they are new customers, use that access to send out emails purportedly from the tech giant itself. So from MicrosoftOnline.com, and like they're legit emails, right? Crudely made emails were sent from MicrosoftOnline.com, an email account that Microsoft uses to send. Oh, even the front part is the actual email account. So the whole email account is actually a legitimate Microsoft email account. Microsoft uses this to send important notifications to users, such as two-factor codes. You have one private message. This is a scam email. In a social post on Tuesday, anti-spam nonprofit Spam House automated notification systems should not allow this level of customization. Right. So we don't know how. We don't know how is super interesting, right? Why does it say crudely made? Be using Microsoft systems to send out phishing emails. Yeah, that's like not targeted correctly. Oh yeah, come on. That subject line is just scam. That's better. But you should target, like if you're targeting an email address, you know the email address you're sending this to, don't, send it to the email address, match it. And yeah, come on, that's bullshit. Funnow.xyz, you have one new private message. I mean, come on. Like, you have a very potent attack vector here, scammer, by using this legitimate email and apparently being able to customize. How much of this are they customizing? The whole HTML of the email? And they don't even know? That's wild. From the connection logs. What's from the connection logs? It says they have new leads. Cool. My shorts have been doing pretty well. That's true. At least on Instagram. On TikTok, I don't know what the fuck's going on TikTok. It's kind of stupid. For over the weekend, what are some suggestions for learning more about detection engineering? Ooh, I got you. I love this question because I get to talk about one of my homies who does cool shit. Boom. Let me introduce you to, I just put this t-shirt away out of the laundry this morning, Detection Engineering Weekly. This is put out by another Zach, who is the head of detection engineering at Datadog. I guess he doesn't name it here, but Datadog. And he does really cool shit. So I would just make sure you're reading this. B, he's got this cool like beginner's guide almost that he started back in June of 2025. And he doesn't put out too much on it, but it's gold, okay? So especially for beginners, because his newsletter isn't necessarily for beginners, even if you are a beginner, I would try to read it, because then anything you don't understand, you can use as a jump off point to go try to understand it, right? But he's got this like field manual beginner's guide of like, what is a detection engineer? What are detection rules? What are detection rules efficacy? What are atomic detection rules? What are composite detections? I mean, this is just great, right? But he does a weekly, even though he doesn't do that field manual too often. He does a weekly, right? He'll talk about a lot of stuff, and he'll link to blog posts in detection engineering. It's a very, very, very good practitioner newsletter. So this isn't just like news aggregator, which is like what I do. So I like to make, my newsletter is for practitioners by practitioners, is like what I like to say. Zach is even more for like specific practitioners by specific practitioners, right? Because this isn't really news. It's like, well, he does go into it a little bit, but it's more tools and things like that. And then he'll like link open source stuff in here. Anyway, 10 out of 10 newsletter that he tends to do. I would start there. The other detection engineering like learning thing I would look at is called KC7. So this is put out, it's like a separate company, but it's built and maintained by the detection and like threat research team at Microsoft. And in order to actually like work in here, you're writing in their detection engineering like tool, right? So like this, you're writing KQL, this is legitimately the tool that they use at Microsoft to do hunts, to do like threat hunting and stuff like this. And this is like a completely free tool that's like gamified, and it starts really easy with like fake investigations, right? And then they get really hard. They literally say if you can solve some of their N-level detections, call them and apply for a job, because the people that work there on their team have a hard time with their later level detections. So it goes from like stuff that they do with elementary school students to teach them about cybersecurity and like ransomware detections, all the way through to like, hey, if you can solve these, call us and apply for a job. So, yeah. Highly recommend those two resources. All right. I am probably going to go write the newsletter. It's probably about that time. So yeah, if you guys haven't, go subscribe. My little teaser is, it sounds like we're going to try to start a podcast. Me and another much larger than me YouTuber that you guys all know are going to try to record a pilot podcast tomorrow. Okay. We're trying to figure out like format, and like we don't want, like, the podcast space is so crowded. I've avoided starting a podcast for so long because I really, really, really didn't want to just be like yet another white guy, floating head podcast, talking to his friends, and it looks like a fucking Zoom call, right? Like, no hate to a bunch of the podcasts out there. It's just like you could throw a dart and hit a podcast, right? So I've avoided it for a long time. That being said, I think there's like a void that could be filled in and around. I mean, cyber could be the spine, but we could even zoom out from cybersecurity a bit, right? It's going to be a new channel. I'll let you guys. It'll be a new channel, and I'll obviously promote it on you guys. If you guys follow me anywhere, you'll see it when we launch, right? I'll obviously make noise about it. But I think there's a void we could fill that isn't just like us yapping to each other and our friends about random stuff, because that's what a lot of podcasts are. And we're trying to figure that out, you know. So I want to be a little bit more like culturally relevant is probably the word to the conversation here, and not just like add to the noise. So if you guys are into, you know, and there's also like, I do a lot of like 90-second content, like 10 to 20 or 10 to 30 minute videos. I do obviously these multi-hour streams. So there's kind of like a content void that, and he does kind of the same thing, right? So it's like I do a lot of written on the newsletter, shorts, you know, somewhat long YouTube videos. Obviously these are multi-hours. So there's like between the 10-minute and the 3-hour, you know, there's a podcast sized thing that I could do there that I could probably hit some people that don't want to do the multi-hour stream, don't, you know, just like the shorts. So anyway, we're going to do it. We're going to try to record tomorrow. We're recording a pilot tomorrow. We will see how this goes. Okay. I'll let you guys know what's up. If you guys have any kinds of things that you would like to see in that kind of format, let me know. It'll obviously be like a YouTube first thing. We're looking at like the stand-up, you know, like that, like the stand-up is like a good format. We like that. But then we're also looking at guests. How could we have guests on that, again, are like relevant to the conversation, not just like homies. So we're going to figure it out. But I just wanted to tease it again, because this is kind of new and we're moving fast, just because we're like, we could either talk about it for a long time and still probably just wind up doing it, or we could just kind of shoot from the hip and try it this week and see how it goes and learn our lessons along the way. All right. Okay, cool. I'm going to go write the dang newsletter. It'll go out in the 7 o'clock hour tomorrow morning, like it does every Friday. And yeah. I will see you guys Tuesday morning. I am in town next week. I got some travel coming up in June. But Tuesday morning, I will be live. Is the podcast going to be live? We were thinking, not at first. We were thinking maybe, because like I said, he's a much bigger creator than I am. So we were thinking maybe that's like a Patreon thing if we get there, right? If we get to like Patreon mode, maybe it's like Patreons can hang out live and then the edited cut kind of goes out the door to the public, right? I don't know. We're toying with ideas. We'll see. We also have some like interest in like launch partners companies that like might want to, like, you know, this podcast brought to you by whatever, but we're both pretty intolerant of like bullshit sponsorship type stuff. So we'd want it to be like a relevant company that we like and would be cool. I will of course tweet. We're not going to do it live tomorrow. So we're going to record, because we're going to record in Riverside. I don't know. I got to figure out how like Prime and them, they record in Riverside, but he live streams it on his YouTube, the stand-up, when they record. I do not know how he does that. So we will figure that out. And like I said, maybe it's like another thing. And we'll probably do 1 or 2 a week at first. I don't know. We'll see. obviously this is all kind of in flight, but, and again, I'm the small fry creator in the relationship. So I'm looking to my partner to help lead a bit. All right, guys, I appreciate you hanging out. Subscribe everywhere if you haven't. It really helps me out. We'll probably put out the GitHub hack video that you guys watched me record that should go out today, hopefully. Doesn't it record on each person's PC, then combine the record? Yes, that's what Riverside does, but apparently there's like a hacky OBS connector to Riverside thing that Prime does to like live stream like while you're doing Riverside. But yes, it does. And that's why we'll get like the edit out of Riverside. Like we'll get the local recordings, high quality out of Riverside, and that'll go out to the podcast feed, right? But live streaming the podcast recording is like I don't know how to do that yet. So I have a hard enough time with restreaming OBS as it is, right? Like, you know, the fucking chat on screen never works the right way and all this kind of stuff. So, all right, cool. Thank you guys. Hopefully the GitHub video goes out today. I got to poke my editor. If not, it'll go out tomorrow. We tried to do Tuesday, Thursday on the YouTube longs, but I didn't get him the GitHub video until yesterday. You guys watched me record it live if you were here. So, but that cut will go out hopefully this afternoon. So if you guys are homies, and I know a bunch of you already do, it means a lot to me when you like, you know, interact and comment on the YouTube videos. I can tell my YouTube videos do better when the engagement is higher, obviously. So I appreciate you. All right, guys, long-winded goodbye. I appreciate you. I will see you